Autonomy. DJI promised a maximum autonomy of 18 minutes as usual while being optimistic. In practice, with hovering or rather gentle flights, I noticed a flight time that topped out at 15 minutes. Not so bad for a Cinewhoop. If you're flying in a difficult environment, it's better to anticipate and finish the flight before the 15 minutes limit. If you fly manual and aggressively, the range drops to over 7 minutes. The flight time is around 7 minutes too, with the GoPro Type HD camera mounted on board and with gentle changes. The scope. DJI promised 10 kilometers in FCC mode and 2 kilometers in CE mode. The brand complies with European regulation for radio communication. Again, the actual numbers are quite different. In France and more generally in European countries, the Avata automatically reduces its power to 25 milliwatts. This is CE mode. What is the result? With the device I had in test, I kept at a horizontal distance in an open environment of 600 meters. Beyond that, although the radio link remains optimal, the video link picks up and ends up being cut off. Disappointing? If we consider the range in strict application of European regulation, this power is more than enough, since the Avata must always remain in direct sight of the observer, who must remain alongside the pilot. But if you want to go further, yes, it's illegal, except in countries like Iceland. The 600 meters are quickly reached and you find yourself frustrated at not being able to continue progressing. Height limitation. This is a common practice at DJI to limit flights to a maximum height of 120 meters from the takeoff point. In the settings, it's possible to push this height up to 500 meters. It's illegal. Not necessarily, since the concept of height in European regulation is different from the measurement carried out by DJI. Note that you can impose a height and a distance of flight if you prefer, to be warned when you go too far to remain honest. The NFZs. The Avata is also subject to restricted or prohibited flight zone, unlockable or not according to the GEO 2.0 tool. The bad news? These areas do not correspond to the indication of the European and French regulation. They are interpretation of DJI. The good news? These areas are very rare, focused on the protection of airports, airfields, prisons, nuclear power plants, military buildings. Bottom line, what if GEO bans you from taking off? It's most definitely for a good reason. You can check GEO forbidden areas in DJI Fly app. Like the DJI FPV, when the Avata changes area, it initiates emergency braking and hovers. It's a bit surprising, especially when flying in manual mode, especially since the message is not necessarily related. I experienced a no M mode UAV too far I. What's really painful? In a building located in the right-of-way of an airport, the Avata picked up the GPS and refused to take off. Since I had no permission to provide, I could not unlock the NFZ and the Avata remained grounded. While in this closed building, the regulations do not apply and nothing legally prohibited me from flying. This is a fairly rare situation, but particularly frustrating when it occurs. Aeroscope data. Like all recent DJI devices, the Avata continuously broadcasts its identity card and flight data like position, speed, height, heading. To read this information, you need an aeroscope detection system from DJI, which is only offered to administrations. The aim is to enable law enforcement to detect drones near sensitive sites. You cannot disable this feature, which operates transparently in the background. Note that it's specific to DJI, different from the French remote electronic signaling and the future European remote direct identification. The Avata does not display any LEDs except for the battery LEDs on the back. This allows filming in a dark environment without being disturbed by flashing LEDs. The code name during development of the drone was not Avata, but the name was James Bondian Organization. You can guess. Can you fly in the rain with the Avata? It's never recommended to fly in the presence of humidity, but the brushless motors are not very sensitive to water, and the rest of the electronics has been protected inside the device. So I flew many times in good rain with no worries, but I do not recommend it. Audio on board the Avata is not broadcast on video return, and it starts recording on HD video. Too bad for those who like to listen to gentle variations in engine speed during flights. The Avata does not offer any automated flight functions such as active track or quick shots. It's not designed for that. You're the pilot. Namely continued. Can we fly on site without turning on and connecting the immersion goggles? Yes, both the DJI FP remote controller 2 and the motion controller. If you turn on the motion controller and the remote controller at the same time, you will not be able to fly with both. The Avata takes into account the first it detects. If you're on the ground with the controller on, you switch on the radio control, you switch off the controller. The radio control is taken into account in a few seconds. If you perform the same manipulation in flight, however, the radio control is not taken into account. You have to turn it off, then turn it back on. Goggles 2 are not compatible with the FPV Air unit from DJI and Vista from Cadix. If you fly in manual mode with the remote control and you turn very hard, there is a risk of a bug. If it happens, the Avata rears up, then the engine cut out and it falls down. Hopefully it will be fixed in future update. In the meantime, avoid too sharp turns.